Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be talking about every stage of the customer journey and how that can impact and help drive deposits to your financial institution. And I'm glad that you can hear and see the deck. That's fantastic. Thanks for letting us know. We are going to kick things off with a few questions, starting with more the acquisition side of things and how to attract new customers and how that can help drive deposits. And then we're going to move further down the funnel. So talk about how that customer journey and customer engagement can really help convert existing customers to potentially purchase or deposit into a different type of product. And then we're going to move into how internally within your institution, how your teams and how your staff can play a huge role in driving deposits and supporting your financial institution in that way. So first and foremost, I would love for everybody who is going to be speaking today to introduce themselves, just to give you an idea of who is here today and who's going to be talking to you.
Hi, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm so excited to be doing this. I'm quite the esteemed panelist group here who bring a lot of wealth of experience. I'm more on the upper funnel side of the channel, so I'll be talking a little bit more about how to drive people into the funnel. So I am the CRO and one of the founding members at Fintel Connect. For those of you who don't know us, we are a specialist in basically partner marketing and acquisition marketing in the financial services space. So what we do is we help financial institutions, and in this context for their deposit products, help them get more visibility across different third-party partners. So anywhere from like a bank rate to a NerdWallet, but also thousands of other maybe niche target YouTuber, TikToker influencers, and kind of anywhere in between. And we help build visibility for those products, and we drive them through the funnel on a results or cost per acquisition basis. So we'll talk about what you need to tap into that channel, what channel that role can play in helping drive growth, and what role it plays in your deposit strategy. So very excited to be here and talk a little bit more about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Alana. And hi, everybody. My name is Craig McLaughlin. I'm the CEO of liquidity.ai. Super excited to be here today. Thanks very much, John and Alana, for having me. liquidity.ai, for those of you that are not aware, is kind of picks up where Fintel drops off in terms of bringing people into the digital experience. So we're focused on how can we architect a digital experience that is personal, just like your best branch person, where we're monitoring what a user is interested in and then personalizing the experience when they come back into it. And so kind of doing everything that's made community banking so successful in the brick and mortar side of the world, but doing that in the digital channel and making sure that customers feel known and appreciated and heard. And when they come back, we're making sure that we're putting them back where they want to be in terms of that search process. And so super excited to be here. And thanks for having me. And I'll hand over to John.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, like I'll reiterate what everyone said. Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. John Finley from LemonadeLXP. So we're a digital growth platform, which in English means we have a platform that has two sides to it. One is for turning staff into experts on your products and your digital channels, and one that's a digital enablement platform to support customers as they migrate to digital. I come at this from a kind of an interesting perspective because Lemonade's a spinoff of another company that I started back in 1999, which was a digital promotions company that morphed online promotions into games to get consumers to buy stuff. So my expertise really lies in motivating people to do things. And I think that I can bring some of that to bear in sharing some strategies and thoughts on what worked for some big brand marketers in the past. And then the Lemonade business is really about supporting folks and training folks, so I can talk about that side as well. So pleased to be here. Looking forward to this. And that's my story.
So without further ado, we're going to kick things off because I know we only have 30 minutes. And so that doesn't give us much time really to get into things, but I'm hoping that you will all walk away with some information, tips and tricks that will help you with your digital growth. So I think I'm going to start off at the top of the funnel. I'm going to start off with Alana. I have a few questions for her. As Alana mentioned, we're very much focused on that top of the funnel, new consumer, new customer acquisition. But before I start off, I would love for everybody to participate in a quick poll. There's just a couple of questions that one question that we would like to ask, and it shouldn't take more than 10 seconds to answer. So if you wouldn't mind, if everybody, when they have a moment, wouldn't mind answering those questions, that would be fantastic. And whilst you're answering it, I'm actually going to kick things off with my first question for Alana. A lot of community banks, a lot of financial institutions out there are all trying to implement digital marketing to acquire new customers. And you might be at different points in your journey. That doesn't matter. But it's good to have kind of that insight and the understanding so that you can make it as successful as possible. So my first question is, before you start acquiring new customers and before anybody, executes a marketing campaign or executes a marketing strategy, what would you say a bank needs to have in place to ensure its success?
But really, I guess we're just wanting to level set is where people at with their digital strategy. How much are they investing in digital? But really, a couple of things I would say from elements of what I would say you need to have to get started with digital is there's two kind of core things I look at. One is infrastructure, and the other is strategy, elements of the strategy. So I'll touch on the infrastructure stuff a little bit, and then I'll switch to the strategy. So with infrastructure, what I mean by that is first and foremost, if you're looking to drive deposits and you're looking to spend on digital, you want to create the best experiences possible for your potential future customers. And to do that, you want a really seamless and easy way for them to actually open an account. So having that digital account opening functionality in place, I would highly suggest having that in place first and foremost, because ultimately, if you're spending on digital, whether it's paid search or in your social channels or through affiliate marketing or influencers, whatever it is, you're going to want to direct them to a place where they're actually going to be able to then take an action. So that's first thing. The second thing is having a really solid and clear journey. And what I mean by that is typically when we're running campaigns, we like to have a campaign that directs someone into either a specific product landing page. So if you're generating deposits for a CD product or a high yield savings account, you're taking them to a simple place where they're not going to get distracted by other calls to action or links at the top for mortgages. They're probably clicking through because they have a need or they're interested in that product. Make it really easy for them. Clear call to action, highlights the product features and benefits, and then takes them directly into, thanks AJ, takes them directly into your account opening. So that's the things that I would say from an infrastructure. The third piece related to infrastructure is the ability to track the effectiveness. So it's one thing to have your account opening in place. It's another to actually be able to measure what you're putting into the funnel. What's happening? Are they making it to the end of the funnel? Are they actually being successfully approved for accounts? And that allows you to see where your spend is actually effectively driving new depositing accounts. We understand, and this is something we come across all the time, is it's not always easy to be able to enable that so that when they come to your bank ecosystem and then click to a third party, whether it's your Core's account opening system or another third party. So that's something that's, happy to share information. If you have someone that runs your analytics, those are the people you want to talk to about setting that up. And then related to tracking, I have three kind of things that I like to look at with that is at an ideal kind of base, you can at least track that they've been approved for an account. Middle of the road is you can see the value of that account. So you want to look at which channels are driving good balances of deposits. So who are the high value accounts? And then optimally, you can then track all the way through, which then allows Craig and his team at Finalytics to actually cross-sell, upsell, understanding where that customer potentially has come from, allows you to be more strategic with then understanding what motivated them to become a customer, and then what else can you offer them to create value. So that's the infrastructure. I'll summarize. Basically, good landing page, good journey, being able to open the account online and being able to track that journey to see what's actually resulting in accounts. And then from a strategy standpoint, that's the second bit. I don't know if I'm running up on my time yet, Julia. So flag me if I'm talking too much. But from a strategy standpoint, there's a couple of core things that we like to look at. And it's really important that if you haven't defined these things yet, again, don't necessarily invest in digital. You want to have these things in place first. So one, really clear on your target audience. from a geo standpoint, as well as just a persona standpoint. The geo is pretty critical for us in the affiliate channel because we don't necessarily, we don't have the ability to really narrowly target to like a specific county. And we're finding a lot of FIs we're talking to as part of their deposit strategy, they're opening the net a little bit wider. If they can take accounts digitally, then they can do so as long as the customers meet that KYC AML criteria. The other thing, really clearly defining your product set and the why. Why should someone want to bank with you? Do you have a great CD rate? Do you have great product features? What are those things that really set you apart so that you can clearly explain to that audience in your marketing what the reason is that they should want to bank with you, and finally have a clear view of what that cost per acquisition target is. A lot of FIs that we talk to, it's one of the biggest question marks because they can't map through the funnel. So they might be paying $100 for someone that's clicking an app start button, but they don't actually know what their cost of acquisition is. So that's something where we can help kind of guide you on that. But having those three things defined really will help make sure that you are ready to actually invest in digital.
Thanks, Alana. One just really quick question. We haven't got much time, Alana, but I wanted to, it's really difficult for financial institutions to decide which digital channel to choose, which one is going to move the needle and generate those deposits. Is there a particular one that you would say it, plays a big part in growing deposits?
Sure, maybe I'll touch on two. Across all of the digital acquisition strategy you have, there's a ton of different tactics you can use. My assumption is a lot of you are employing paid search as one channel through Google, but you might do some display advertising. You might be doing Facebook, you might be buying email lists and then emailing them. The two biggest ones we typically see, and they're very lower funnel, meaning you're targeting a very high intent audience, is paid search and affiliates. With paid search, it can be expensive, but you can be fairly targeted with how you're targeting that audience. And you just want to make sure that you can track that effectiveness and not just tracking clicks or impressions. You're actually looking at people that are clicking through and converting. But the channel really that's typically the most underutilized, and I'm not just saying this because this is what we do, but it's the affiliate and influencer channel. You typically get people who are shopping for products. So making sure your financial institution is part of that consideration set is really critical. And that's why defining your product value set is really important, because the affiliates can then advocate for your brand. It helps build credibility. So you're getting these third parties that are talking about your institution, what value you have to offer, and why your high yield savings accounts or your CDs are a great fit. And it's results based. So it's typically on a cost per funded account basis. So the typical CPAs we see are anywhere from kind of like 120 to 150 for an approved funded CD account, for example, or high yield savings account. So, and the one thing I'll just end on with the affiliates is a lot of our clients employing this channel at the moment are seeing really high quality accounts coming through the funnel. So those that are much likelier to convert and actually get approved, but the balances that they're carrying and the stickiness of the accounts are quite high as well compared to their other digital channels. And it's, again, just because people like to shop around, they go to these third-party websites, again, like a NerdWallet, a Bankrate, but there's Forbes, Business Insider, Millennial Money. There's so many different sites you can kind of get your bank's exposure on and then run the campaigns on a results basis.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alana. So I wanted to move on and chat with Craig for a bit, because obviously, the acquiring new customers is one part on how to grow deposit growth. But we also need to focus on that customer journey and customer engagement, because at the end of the day, we want to convert those customers and we want to keep those customers. And it's not that easy these days because there are so many options out there, and it's very, very easy for institutions to lose customers to other financial institutions out there. So my question for you, Craig, so everyone's always talking about customer journey and engagement and how you can use tracking and data analytics to understand your consumers' interactions. But how can FIs analyze these journeys and identify touch points for deposit growth?
That's a great question. Thanks, Alana. And it's funny, I'm reminded of what you said earlier, Alana, in terms of the cost per ad. And we actually had a client probably 10 years ago that was investing pretty heavily in acquisition. And they were really proud of it. They were really thought it was big, like big regional bank. And it turned out that when we did analytics to understand how that was actually performing, that their cost per account was something like $1,000 per account acquired. It was just,
Oh,
it
no.
was ridiculous. And so like the idea of really digging into how are these campaigns performing in terms of drive to site, is I think crucially important today. What we try and think about is kind of where John and his team are focused, which is we really see the secret sauce of community banking are the people that are inside your offices that understand your customers, right? That when somebody walks into a branch, they know them, they understand them, they're able to just very quickly look at the behavior that they've had with the organization and then make recommendations in terms of the next logical product. So your best, your most seasoned universal banker kind of represents that kind of a person. And so the trick is how in this digital transition, how do you take that offline value proposition and manifest it digitally? So at FinTech Connect, you guys are doing a great job of bringing people to site that are interested, right? The challenge then is once they've demonstrated and risen their hand and said, look, I actually am interested in learning more about you, is how do you do a good job of capturing that interest and converting that into something that actually becomes a customer? And that's where we're focused. And we're trying to do the same thing that your best branch person would do. So we're looking at data, we're looking at engagement, we're trying to understand how does that then tell a story about what that person is interested in, and then how can we in real time react to those data insights and change the experience. So if someone has come in and it looks like they're looking at CDs, well, when they come back, we shouldn't start talking to them about mortgages. And same thing is true. We see over and over again clients that are facing this liquidity crunch where they're saying from the top down, they're saying, we don't really care about what, personalizing the experience. What we really care about is just selling CDs. And so we want to promote just CDs to every person that comes into the channel. The problem is that's a huge mistake, right? Because most people can't afford a CD. Most people aren't interested in a CD. Some people, there's not the right fit for it. And so to two things. One is to listen to what the user is doing, the experience through data, and then use that to then personalize the experience is crucial. And then secondarily, if you get the opportunity to plug into online banking to understand who that consumer is, to use those data points to begin to complete that picture of who that person is, right? So if this is somebody that has, say, a credit card with you or a checking account with you, but doesn't have a CD, but clearly has the wherewithal to have a CD based on the balances that they carry, well, that all of a sudden becomes somebody that's a really good target to promote that product to. And the opposite is true of somebody that's maybe younger. Like I always think of like my son, right? 18 years old, trying to convince him to buy a CD is kind of, it's a long, arduous, useless journey, right? It's not gonna get you very far. But there are things he's very interested in, right? So like an auto loan is probably pretty high on his next 4 years of engagement. So understanding the consumer and doing that. And if you think of what your best branch person would do, they would do exactly that, right? So they would say, oh, hey, 18-year-old boy, you're probably thinking about these things, which means that you should be thinking about these things in advance of that. So I think that's kind of how we think about it. And we think that getting this right is crucially important today because so much of the digital experience is representing the growth for the institution. 50% of new product applications for anything inside the institution come from digital in a lot of cases. It takes about 3.2 visits for somebody to convert into one of those products. So making sure that you put your best foot forward digitally and you're doing all of those things that make you great in a brick and mortar world is kind of where we focus at FinTech.
Fantastic. And I know to your point about that brick and mortar going into the branch and having that face-to-face interaction, I mean, that's a big part of what a community bank is and supporting, your local community. And so going digital is, something that everyone's trying to do at the moment. But how do you keep that personal interaction and how do you keep that, customer experience, top notch, the way you would want it to be, in a brick and mortar? I mean, obviously you wanted it to be personal, but how does that work? How do you personalize the digital customer experience and how does it contribute to that, that loyalty and that long-term deposit growth that you're trying to achieve?
Well, yeah, I think it comes down to just listening. And so, I mean, I think your best universal banker does that inside of a branch. And it's somebody who's done this for 30 years and can take those insights and apply it pretty easily to coaching the next kind of generation of people behind the counter. We're doing the same thing in the digital channel. So we're just listening. We're watching to determine what content a user is demonstrating interest in. If they're engaging with the calculator, or say a home loan, well, when they come back to the site, we're going to talk about home loans. We're going to begin to understand that this is somebody interested in that. If somebody has come into your digital online account origination tool and let's say applied for a mortgage, we're going to identify that as a behavior, and then we're going to bubble up the next logical service experience that connects to that. So driving them into check your loan status, frequently asked questions, those types of things, so that we're curating the experience around an individual. And we kind of think of it the same way that a big tech would think about it. So you think of what Amazon has done with product recommendations, or what Netflix does with movie recommendations. They're using data on the consumer, and then they're using that to build a better experience for them. And we're doing the same thing in the banking realm, which I think is just a function of just listening and then reacting and returning content that's appropriate.
No, thank you. That's great. If everybody has a moment to quickly complete this, I will move on to our last part, which is all to do with your frontline staff and spotting opportunities for deposit growth. So
really insightful stuff, Ilana and Craig. It's interesting to see your take on it and what part you contribute to driving deposits. From our end, we're kind of on the employee education side and supporting customers. But I wanted to back up to your deposit strategy, because I think this whole thing is powered by a deposit strategy. And I mean, typically, one of the most common strategies is interest rates. I did a little poking around before this webinar and noticed that, you've got a number of mid-sized banks that are offering like 5.6%. You've got 4 banks that are offering 5.25%, and then a bunch offering 5%. And some of them are on no minimum deposit. Some of them are on $100,000 minimum deposit. So interest rates are, obviously the key driver, but I think there's a lot of ways that we can drive deposits that we don't have to necessarily be the ones who win on interest rates. And my thinking on that was, you typically see things like account opening incentives, but I think you could extend those incentives to referrals, people who refer new customers who end up depositing. You could give a reward to them. You could have deposit drives where we're trying to drive X amount in total deposits in a time period. And if we reach that goal, the bank's going to make a donation to something. Like there's a lot of ways that you can create promotions and create ways to incentivize customers to increase the amount they're depositing. On the incentive side, I think that's one effective way. And then this is speaking to my previous life with my other business where we did a lot of this stuff. These are tactics that we used for brands like Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, the NFL, all sorts of folks. And they worked, and I think they can apply here. So the other thing is gamifying a savings account. So imagine you had a savings account, but each time you reached a certain level of savings, you got a reward or your interest rate went up. And you saw your meter. Oh, you're $5 short of hitting 1,000, and then you get a toaster or whatever, whatever the thing is. My point is those things will work. They motivate people. When you see you're close to hitting a threshold, you're going to try to hit it. There's also the idea of promotions like save to win. So anybody who deposits during a certain time frame is entered into a draw, and you do it monthly or whatever. You can gamify the referral side of things. You can also offer incentives to frontline staff to motivate them to help you drive deposits. So that's all about what's the strategy behind it? Because I think if you don't have a good strategy, it doesn't matter what you do from a media standpoint, doesn't matter what you do from an education standpoint. If your strategy sucks, your deposits you're not going to see the growth you want. So I think that's the first piece. Then you get Ilana and Craig to help you out with all the stuff I don't understand. And then you come back to us with how the heck do we make sure that our frontline staff, the people who are having conversations with customers, understand our deposit strategy, its value propositions, and why it will be interesting to customers so they can articulate the benefits of this deposit strategy to the customer. And that's where I think you need to leverage some modern learning strategies. The challenge you've got is that at most financial institutions, staff perceive training as a dreadful experience because they attribute it or associate it with the compliance training that they have to do every year. So nobody's really all that enthusiastic to take more training. So that's why our trick is to gamify training, to make it fun so that people don't sort of resist it. But I think staff are one element. Your digital marketing, your SEO, your social, all those things are sort of awareness drivers. Staff are awareness drivers too. They're like mini marketers, and they're having all the conversations with customers. And I think the key is to educate those folks on the value propositions and to do it in a fun way and even a rewarding way. Because I think if you want to grow deposits, to me, it's about delighting your customers, it's about delighting your staff, and the boat will rise. And that's kind of how our business works. I mean, right behind me, you probably can't see it, but there's a little poster that says strive to delight. That's the cornerstone of our business. And I think it applies to deposits. Well, I think it applies to everything in life, but it applies to deposits in that way. If you can offer an incentive that is worthwhile for the customer, and then you can articulate it through your media channels and through your front line, and you can give your front line some type of perk for helping you do this, I think that's the winning strategy.
John, we have a question, actually. Sorry for interrupting you, but we have a question. I know we're up for time and everything. So the question is, what's a reasonable incentive for a teller for opening a new account?
I think $1 million. Just kidding.
Love
crazy. Like, think of this. How valuable is a bit of paid time off? What are the kinds of things, like you can even ask your staff, of these three things, what would be most interesting? Just like the polls we're running, get your whole team on a Zoom and poll them. They'll tell you what will work, but paid time off works. A gift certificate for dinner or something that adds value to their life. Like when we ran the promotions business we had for years, we'd be surprised at how small an incentive will work to drive small actions. The larger the investment you're asking for a person, the larger the incentive has to be. But I think you can delight people with very little. And I think it's also about other people at your organization will take pleasure in seeing others win and succeed. So we do a monthly Zoom call because we're fully remote. And we used one of our old promotional games from our old business, and we run it all the time. And it's like this pyramid game where you have to guess which thing is and make it to the top. And if you make it to the top at our monthly meeting, you win $1,000. Well, when someone wins $1,000,
Can I join?
Well, you fill out an application because we're always looking for talented people. But you wouldn't believe how excited everybody gets on that Zoom call when someone wins $1,000, except me because I own the company. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But these kinds of people will be like, it's infectious when people see others at the organization have success and something delightful happens to them. It delights everybody. So I think if I were trying to figure out what the incentive is, I'd ask my staff and I'd give a long think into what kind of things are important to them and what are the things I can do to put a smile on their face.
Fantastic. There is one more question. So what are the key performance indicators that institutions should track to measure the success of their deposit growth initiatives? I think this is something maybe Alana and Craig might be able to answer probably a bit more, just because they work on a day-to-day on those types of areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do you want, so Alana, you probably have your own metrics as it relates to the acquisition side of what would demonstrate an effective acquisition strategy in terms of drive to site. Once the visitor is on the site, we look at a variety of metrics. So we look at things like total deposit growth, we look at new account openings, we look at average balance per account, account retention rates, cross-sell ratios, net promoter scores, deposit attrition rates, cost of acquisition, channel usage.
Yeah.
We do some demographic analysis to understand where those deposits are coming from. And then just kind of overall engagement. Time to account opening is also also a particularly critical component. And then fundamentally, I think it's also related to just accounts. It's easy to track people that completed the form. I mean, it's a form. It's harder to go through and track all the way to funded. So to say, here's people that went all the way through, applied, and then were funded or took the actual account and made it through legal. So it's those are the metrics we look at.
Fantastic, thank you. I would love to answer any questions that anyone, not me personally, but if anyone has any questions, I would love to open it up for anybody who wants answers to anything.
Maybe I'll add just on the analytics piece for the person who, well, I see one question from AJ, actually. I can answer that one after. On the top of funnel metrics, I'd look at things like click to application, demonstrates intent, where you're spending your money on digital, if people are clicking through and then actually submitting an application, and then the approval rate as well of the funnel. So to Craig's point, if you're bringing good quality into the funnel, then they should get approved. It's a good indicator of maybe your funnel's broken. Maybe there's typical drop-off points in the funnel, and then approval rate in terms of how you're targeting. So if they're applying for a product that they shouldn't be eligible for, like you're advertising a jumbo deposit product, but it's going to an audience that maybe wouldn't be eligible, then, you know, there's a misalignment. So those are the two metrics I would add. And then the other question I think was on a range of cost of acquisition for digital. So from what we're seeing, and I think the affiliate channel is a really good litmus test because the affiliates have got their ears to the ground. The things that they kind of look at is what products have the most, resonate most with their audiences. And that's typically the ones that they're showcasing on their site. And they actually orient around an earnings per click metric. So really, how much money do they make for every click they send off, which has to do with the journey, has to do with the affinity for the product, all of those things. But I'd say usually at minimum, and it depends on the mix of the product. So a checking account slightly different than a high yield savings, which is slightly different than a CD that's 12 months and a minimum deposit of $10,000. The threshold's a little higher, going to cost you a little bit more. The range, I'd say on average, we're seeing at the moment for either high yield savings or CDs is between the 120 to 150 mark for an approved and funded account. So that's the success metric we work towards. If clients are wanting to drive more volume or accelerate the growth of the channel and results, then you might choose to use that cost of acquisition as an incentive for the affiliate to push your brand a little bit more and invest more behind it. So it can go up to like the $200 mark, let's say. We understand, you know, there's a lot, we actually get asked the question a lot of how do we get to be on a bank rate? And it's super expensive. They have like very high threshold for minimum spend, but there's a ton of other partners that are great that will work on a cost of acquisition. So yeah, that's probably what I would suggest in terms of a range. I don't know if Craig, you see that similarly.
Yeah, no, I the one thing that stood out to what you were saying that I really wanted to underscore, Alana, is that you said if the funnel is good, right? And I'm sure if you did just a back of the napkin kind of guesstimate in terms of the percentage of time that you engage with a client where the funnel is actually not good, that it hasn't been thoughtful, like no one's actually themselves gone and tried to apply for an account to realize how bad it is, particularly compared to like a great digital experience. I think just that's such low hanging fruit, right? If you really just eat your own dog food, go try and apply for something, realize that it's not very good, identify how you might be able to make it better. Like that kind of iterative and incremental process yields so much improvement. So I just would encourage everybody to really take a look at that.
Perfect. Thank you, Craig. Just one more thing from AJ, who is asking, if you have $120 to $200 per acquisition, what would be a reasonable lifetime value, CLV, for that account?
Great
Who would
question.
like to answer that? It's a good question. Very good.
That is a great question. Yeah.
I can jump in, Craig, maybe you have a different opinion. So the golden ratio we always look for, and this is for your total acquisition cost, would be 1 to 3. You should always have at least an anticipated 3 times what you've spent to acquire a customer in terms of lifetime value. Typically, we see through the affiliate channel, it is typically a lot higher than that. So the ratio is like 1 to 5 plus or more. And it depends on, again, how you've been able to then monetize and cross-sell that customer too. So are they just coming for that CD account and you're making the money off of them, but then from a transaction standpoint or whatever, they haven't engaged in other products? We like to see that, those accounts are actually sticky and cross-sell. But that's typically how we like to look at it. And it's every kind of golden ratio or how our clients look at it is very different in what they brief us. Craig, I don't know if you see it any differently.
No, I would agree. We're obviously, we want to bring that down as low as we can. It's hard for us to have one single rule, just given that we work with clients that are kind of across multiple geos and represent different kinds of customer types. But we're really oriented around when somebody does come to the site, how can we increase the likelihood that they actually do complete that application? And then two is, once they have become a customer, how do we then deepen that relationship? So what can we learn about them, and how do we use those insights to offer up an experience that's more targeted, that gives the user the sense that we are listening and we care? So
I think that's where the training aspect comes in for frontline staff, is if you've got the data, you've got the information on the customer, are you teaching staff how to use it, and are you providing it to staff in a timely manner that's right in front of them, so when they're having a customer conversation, they have the relevant information to make that conversation as relevant to the customer as possible. So I think that's a key element.
Yeah, absolutely. Data plays a lot of a role in all aspects of that whole customer journey, I think, from acquisition all the way down to the bottom to staff members and even communication and tools that they use. I really hope this was very helpful for everybody. Obviously, each panelist here comes from a different part, I guess, of the customer engagement, customer journey funnel.
Not to cut you off, there is one more question, Stacey, if you want, if you don't have time to answer it. Yeah, Stacey, I can provide some more details after, but her question was around advice on the success of checking and CD combination offers to retain CD customers. So I think Craig and I probably both could provide some guidance. We have clients where we're tell us what our CD offer should look like. And it's a unit economics exercise. And, from term to rate to minimum deposit criteria in order for them to remain competitive. And then it's what are the incentives that you can offer them beyond that from an experience standpoint. So it's things like, how easy is it? Do you have solutions to enable them to become the primary institution where they're receiving direct deposits for paycheck? Is it easy for them to earn rewards? I read a great article on Financial Brand about the importance of actually prioritizing the rewards that you offer to your existing customers. So not just using rates as a hook to acquisition, but actually paying it forward to your existing customers and allowing them to earn good rates from ongoing savings and checking accounts. So those are the types of things that, emotionally, what is going to incent them is a great experience, but also they're getting real value out of actually continuing to bank with you.
yeah, I totally agree with that a lot. I'm having conversations with the clients that are in the same vein, where they're saying, hey, we spent a lot of money doing acquisition. We have the customers now. How are we going to deepen those relationships? And can we kind of pick off a piece of that budget and use it to develop better loyalty, and do it by delivering value, not by kind of trying to put up a vanity metric of new customers acquired, but actually giving value to the customers you already have, and doing it in ways that support both the bank's and great interest in terms of wallet share growth, and also the customer's interest in terms of just better priced products.
John, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think those guys got it.
I think so too. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Oh, lovely. We got a nice little message saying, great webinar, aloha. So that's great feedback. Yeah. But if any of you do have time, I did ping the link to the survey. Feel free to complete it. We love getting feedback, from you all, and hope that next time, if there's anything we missed or you wanted to hear more about, then maybe we can create another webinar to cover those topics or go over the areas that you felt like were perhaps missing or something. So please fill it out, and we will reach out to you with our contact information and everything like that. So if you had any further questions or you wanted further information, everybody here would be more than happy to support and help.